Hello, everyone. Um, I'll ask our panelists to kind of turn on their cameras and microphones. But great to have everyone here today, and thank you for tuning in. I really appreciate you spending the time with us here this morning or this afternoon if you're further afield. Before we start, I'll just let everyone know that we are going to be recording this session today, so just to make you aware of that. I'd like to introduce our CX for Growth webinar series. We're going to be running this kind of throughout the year from the startups team here at Intercom and bringing in special guests each month to talk about different customer experience topics, really with the kind of goal to help you drive growth in your business or in your startup. So grab a coffee and let's settle in for today's conversation. We're really happy to have the great team here, the wonderful team, should I say, from Great Question, who are an all-in-one customer research platform. Thanks, Ned. I'll just introduce today's topic very quickly. So, the topic is how to ask your customers great questions and gather actionable feedback. We'll first look at how to bake in a process and culture of customer feedback, excuse me, and then how to scale customer feedback approaches in your business. And then lastly, kind of identifying your advocates and becoming their biggest supporters. So I might go around the screen and let everyone get introduced. I'll start with myself. I'm Alan McGlinchey, based on the startups team with Intercom here in San Francisco. And I work with a lot of VCs globally and with founders, really promoting Intercom to them. So I'll let Ava from our team introduce herself. Thanks, Ava.
So my name's Ava, I'm based in Dublin. I've been with Intercom almost a year now, and I work on the customer advocacy team as a customer advocacy specialist.
Thanks, Ava. I'll pass to you, Sarah.
Yes, it's great to meet everyone. Thank you so much for having us. I am Sarah Cunningham-Scarf, the head of customer success here at Great Question. Been working with our customers a lot through different channels, of course, Intercom being one of the main ones that we use to gather feedback. And I will pass the mic to Ned.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ned Dwyer. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Great Question. I am super passionate about customer success and customer research. So I'll probably be talking a lot about that today. And I clearly need to get a better profile pic. There's one with me throwing my hands up in the air.
You're looking enthusiastic anyway, I'll give you that.
There you go. I'll take that. I'll take it.
Before we kind of dig into the discussion, it'd be great to hear kind of why you started Great Question and how your platform kind of helps approach customer feedback, helps companies approach customer feedback, should I say.
Yeah, so the story behind Great Question is I joined, we sold our previous company to GoDaddy, big hosting company. And day one, I was tasked with what's the strategy for how you're going to implement this marketplace business into GoDaddy. And the first question I asked was like, who are our customers? We've got to start with the customer problem at the heart of it. And even though they had a fantastic customer research team, and they are a very customer-centric company, it was really challenging me to go and find past research to understand what customers were telling us, or even to find new customers to go and talk to go and either run surveys or customer interviews or even prototype tests to build the right product that people wanted.
Yeah, that like information was just siloed in documents, or past teams had forgotten about it, or what was kind of the
I think it's kind of a combo. There was I would love to wish it was siloed into like Google Drive or places like that, but really it was like lost in people's inboxes. And so what I found after a little bit of time there was that every product manager and designer and marketer in the company was doing research, but they were having to learn it from scratch every time. And what they were learning wasn't necessarily being filtered around the organization. And so that's why we created Great Question, was create the easiest way for people to build a panel of customers that want to participate in research, find the right method to run that research to answer the big gnarly questions you've got, the great questions, and then share what it is that you learned with your team, and do that in an all-in-one tool. So that's me, and also why I'm super excited about what you guys are doing with Intercom Surveys.
Yeah, actually, we just launched Intercom Surveys a while ago. I suppose with third-party cookies becoming a thing of the past, we believe that first-party data is going to be crucial for businesses to really build lasting relationships with their customers. So we introduced surveys, which will really help collect in-context feedback when your customers are on your website or on your app. When they're ready to talk to you, collect that feedback and build those attributes so that you can talk to them on an ongoing basis. So if anyone wants to learn more about the surveys tool, check out our website or our blog. But I might dig into our topic here today, which is really how to bake in a process and culture of customer feedback. So Ava, I might start with you. A lot of teams here at Intercom, we obsess about customer feedback. It'd be great to understand how the advocacy team approaches it.
Yeah, so like as you mentioned there, Alan, there's a lot of different teams that take feedback into consideration here at Intercom, and it's a really important part of like our history and how we've gotten to where we are today. And the customer advocacy team is no different. So there's lots of different ways that we take it into account. So we used to handle the NPS survey, and the reason that we actually passed this on to our research and development team was because we could only take it to a certain level. And so we found that we were missing out on some vital feedback by not having the insights and the development that the research and development team had. And so we passed that on. So that's like one way, I suppose, that you can look at feedback on our team, is that we took it to a certain level and passed it on. On a day-to-day basis, reviews are a big part of what I look at. G2, TrustRadius, Gartner, we're on them all. And we look at the reviews and we look at each piece of feedback on those reviews. Like I read most, I aim to reply to all reviews, and sometimes
get busy. There's a lot of reviews out there.
We get a lot of reviews.
Yeah.
But I look at most of them, or I try to look at most of them, and take that feedback, because like someone is taking time out of their day to write you a review. On G2, they ask you what you like and what you don't like. So it's a really good opportunity to get this amazing data and information that you wouldn't get, I think, on a day-to-day basis. So we take that feedback and we'll plug it into the different teams. So like if there's something about support, or recently there was something about load times with Intercom, and like that there was an issue. So I brought this to the research development team, and they actually found the same theme was coming up in the NPS. So that meant that we could have two data points, two different sources of data that we're talking about NPS, about the load times being an issue, and then we could action it from there. And we look then as well like at every piece of feedback as a gift, because someone, as I said, is taking time out of your day. But also if someone gives you a bad feedback or bad review and you action that, they can actually turn into your biggest advocate. And like that's a really powerful change, because someone is actually complaining, they actually probably care a good bit about you. So if you can turn that around, I think that's when it's really powerful, and you can make it ever a long-term advocate there.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I suppose, Sarah, from your customer success side at a growing startup, how does your team kind of create that culture of gathering and acting on feedback on an ongoing basis?
Well, being a customer feedback platform definitely has some advantages there, because it's literally baked into our culture and our DNA.
Don't suffer from too many chefs in the kitchen at all.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly, Alan. But we take it a step further from gathering that feedback to go into what Ava was saying about actually actioning that feedback. So how do you take that and then use it to our advantage? And so from day one, even before I joined, Ned and the rest of the team were creating shared Slack channels with our first customers to get that continuous feedback loop, as well as we were consistently shipping and growing the team. And I kind of view my role as making sure that as we grow, that culture remains the same. And so including all that feedback and guidance from our customers, that we don't really view it as feedback as much as guidance to lead us in the right direction, including that in every single product conversation that we're making. So we're right now finalizing our Q2 roadmap and implementing it. So including the feedback and the voice of the customer in those conversations. We have weekly product meetings where we prioritize next sprint. So including feedback there and making sure that voice of the customer is heard from the top down in every single decision that happens at Great Question. Of course, that's a lot easier when it's a small team of 14 as opposed to a company like Intercom. So we have a little bit of a benefit there. But I think if you start from the beginning with that mindset where you are your customer's advocate and you want them to be yours, but if you advocate for them internally in everything that you do and bake that feedback into your decisions, then they'll become yours eventually.
Yeah, and I think, what you mentioned about kind of the shared Slack channel, I guess getting that live conversational feedback is where we see Intercom being used so heavily as well. Ask me about a rental car experience I had in Dublin Airport a few weeks ago. At the time, I'd have a lot to say, but ask me about it now, and I've kind of forgotten all the details and things like that. But it's the live in context piece that if you're using Slack or a messenger tool or indeed an Intercom, that could be quite powerful to capture those live moments. And within Great Question, you have a really interesting tool called Clips. Could you tell me a little bit more about how that's used?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Alan. We're going to use this nonstop throughout this entire. It never gets old. Never gets old. So with the live interviews that we conduct regularly with our customers, our tool will transcribe them and pull in the Zoom recording, and then you can actually like highlight and create a video clip or snippet from that larger conversation and share it externally. So if you think about throwing that short that URL to that short clip in engineering tickets, in product boards, in Miro, wherever any decisions being made, to make it really easy to say, hey, jump in here. Here's what I'm just describing to you directly from the voice of the customer, right from the horse's mouth within about 15 or 30 seconds, just so that you're hearing directly from the customer and it's not siloed and stuck with just me. So really powerful feature, yeah.
I mentioned first party data earlier. It doesn't get more first party than the exact video recording.
Exactly.
That's pretty strong. Ned, I suppose for startups that are building their feedback motion from day one, or indeed teams at more established companies that are looking at refreshing their approach, what would you advise them? What are the important elements, the key elements to get going?
Yeah, I think it is quite different, I think, for startups versus more established companies. As a startup from day one, we made a commitment to ourselves to put customer learnings, customer insights at the center of all of our product design, marketing decisions. And so I think that's key. Our product principles have really driven everything we've done, and it makes it easier for everyone to make decisions when we have these principles we're working from. The way we bake that in is we have built a panel of customers that want to participate in research. So they aren't always customers. Some of them are just like other researchers or product managers or marketers that are like willing to give us some time. But these are the people that we go to run interviews, prototype tests, and things like that. And we have this thing called a rolling study that we run. So one way we make this automated as part of our process is every Thursday at 10 a.m., we invite a new customer in, and we get them to tell us their story. We show them our latest designs or product roadmaps or whatever those questions are that have been bubbling up all week. And it's sort of been a great release for the team.
Oh, that's a nice idea. We have some similar kind of a customer spotlight that we do. I found it really helpful joining about 6 months ago, just to learn, directly from the customers what their experience of using the tools are, what their issues are, what their delight points or positives are about it as well. So
I think there's kind of two surprising things about that. One is it's surprising how few companies actually do it. And so clearly, like, Intercom is super customer informed and like customer centric. It's surprising how few people do it. It's also surprising how every single time, even today, after living and breathing this, I always learn something new. There's always some light bulb, like, oh my gosh, of course. And that's why I keep doing it.
Yeah, or some companies do it once a year around an event or something like that. That's the way I've seen it be done in the past. So it's trying to be more consistent throughout, I think is super interesting. And I suppose that kind of leads us on to scalable customer feedback approaches. So with the companies that you're working with, you have an impressive list of customers on your website, from Brex to Main Street, Medallia. Like, can you talk through about how they're kind of gathering feedback at scale in their business, Ned?
Yeah, so I think Auth0 actually is probably a really great example. It's led by a guy called Brad Arrigo, who's been in the customer research space for a long time, and really a pioneer and a heavy advocate of the idea of research democratization. The idea that it doesn't necessarily need to be just the customer research team doing it. Clearly, they're very good at what they do, very important role to play in running more strategic research and developing processes. But it's this realization that everyone in the company has the capacity to go and be running customer interviews or doing prototype tests or things like that. So why don't we give them the tools and resources to make them more effective at that, and make sure they're doing things in the right way to get high quality insights they can share with the team. Yeah. So the thing that Brad has done at Auth0 is not only put the processes in place so that if someone wants to run a customer interview or a session, they've got the tool there to press a few buttons and find the right customer and schedule that. But he also runs training sessions. So he's regularly running sessions to upskill everyone's ability to go and do this effectively, and create those insights that inform change at the company. I think that the Honeybook is another customer of ours that has done a great job of this. And so both of these companies actually talk a little bit about the idea of building your army of people in the company that are your research army that's going to go out there and find these customers and extract these insights. And Honeybook has done it by co-opting members of their customer support and customer success team, and saying, look, this is the initiative that we're trying to understand right now. Here's an interview guide. Can you please go out, find 10 customers, here's some parameters, and they'll go out there and actually farm their customers I wish there was a better term for that, to inform what's ultimately going to happen on the product roadmap. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Oh, that's fantastic. I suppose, moving on, Ava, I imagine there's a lot of projects where you kind of have to be super personal with the customer feedback that you're gathering and things like that, but also times when you have to zoom out and work at more scale. Can you talk about some examples that worked well at Intercom?
Yeah, I think because customer advocacy is quite young, like the team here in Intercom is only 2 years old. So it is a relatively new team. And so I think we are quite good at doing the personal parts of things. And it's much easier to do that, I think, actually with your customer advocacy hat on. And so like when we invite people to speak at events, or like you're talking about those the insights that we get, like asking customers to do that on a one-to-one basis, it's a lot easier once you find a customer to say yes. But like that's a lot easier. And then in terms of the scale side of things, I suppose one of the big outputs that we have in terms of customer feedback and things like that are customer evidence, because like that's like great customers who we've worked with them and we are delivering on our promises and more. And so one way that we try to kind of scale that is we kind of took the process and broke it down and try to figure out where we could make this easier and where we could take people's involvement, like let's say from the relationships team, like their account owners, that stuff, like how we could take them away. So we've done that, and what we do is we send out a questionnaire directly to the customers, and we get some feedback through that as well. So it's just kind of looking at ways that we could do this on a bigger process. And then obviously then our entire G2 review engine is powered by our NPS. So anyone who gives us is a promoter, so I think it's 8 or above, and we ask them to leave us a review in G2.
Oh, nice.
That's another way for us to, so they've got 2 avenues then of feedback. So, as I said, G2 has definitive questions that they ask. So it's a really nice way for us to get maybe some more insights and plug it into our customer insights engine. And
do we pick up the NPS using Intercom as our own tool, do we?
Yeah, so I believe they've transitioned it over to surveys that we were using before. But I think they're working on transitioning if they haven't already done that. But it means then that using Series, we have like a campaign built, and you can take some of the insights that we like that data point within Intercom and send them out a campaign through that.
Oh, that's super. And I suppose moving on to identifying customer advocates and becoming their biggest supporters. Sarah, you have super experience in customer success at Great Question and before. So it'd be great to understand, how you identify your top advocates, and then also how you approach building a relationship to elevate their story as well.
Totally. So from a data mining perspective, your advocates will be the people that are living and breathing in your tool. So your power users are likely to be your biggest advocates because that means they're seeing value. But they're also people that you form more of a personal relationship with, where if they provide a piece of maybe constructive feedback saying, hey, this feature would operate better if it looked like this instead of the way it is right now, it's listening to them and letting them know, hey, we want that constructive feedback so that we can iterate over time and continue to meet your needs, and listening to them and including that in future releases. And when they feel heard, and we actually action their feedback, it makes them want to stick around longer because now they've got skin in the game, right?
Yeah.
And so it's a give and take, and it's I'm going to use 3 cliches in a row. Don't blame me, I've only had 1 coffee this morning, but it's a give and take, and it's not a one-way street. It's not just your customers giving you feedback. It's dying. It's not just customers giving you feedback and you taking it to improve your product. There has to be value for the customer as well. And once they feel like their hands being held and you actually give a crap, pardon my French, about what they do have to say and the help that they can provide you, and you give them help back, that's when you can really find that customer advocate that will scream and shout from the rooftops about your brand. And as I was mentioning in the Q&A there, if people aren't responding to things like questionnaires, the best way to make them feel seen and heard is personalizing that outreach. And of course, that's hard to do at scale, which is why we're such large proponents about democratizing that research and being able to contact customers at any part of the organization. So leveraging your CSMs to send those personal notes and say, hey, saw you've done this in the product recently. Any thoughts on it? Want to hop on a quick call, or having a quarterly business review, or which is what our customers do, giving some swag or a gift card for their feedback, showing that you value what they're taking time to do. And that loyalty will just grow over time.
And do you see the kind of swag and incentives being used more so in recent years, just because it's got so much easier to send them to people, right, with some of the tools out there?
If we're talking about product feedback and helping you guide your product in the right direction, then absolutely, incentives are just, it's the polite thing to do. If someone's giving you their time, you should give them something back. And there's a whole bunch of strategy around how you should, what type of incentive to do, and like what's a reasonable amount to give someone. Like, do you just give someone a $10 Starbucks card, or do you go a little bit above and beyond? It depends on your age and stage and what you're actually looking to learn from your customers. Right. But it certainly is the nice thing to do.
Yeah, no, I appreciate
I'd also add just with incentives really quickly, because it's a hot button topic that comes up with us all the time about how people get feedback out of their customers. Incentives make it easier to get feedback from customers that don't want to talk to you.
Yes.
And often those people, like, it's great to have these champions that are really hungry and passionate, and they're going to scream at you, or they're going to praise you. But equally, it's good to find those people that don't have that intrinsic motivation because they don't care. I also want to know what they think.
No, that's certainly true. Do you have to be careful of incentive hunters out there as well that are just...
Yeah, 100%. Screening folks is, for sure. Happens all the time.
Yeah, I suppose we want to move on to some questions and leave some time at the end here. So cool. I might move to you, Ned, maybe just a few pieces of advice to leave the audience as they're kind of looking at building their own motion in the space. Like, where would you say?
To be honest, I would start with defining the question. Like, what are you trying to understand from your customers? Is it about how satisfied is everyone in general? So Net Promoter Score or CSAT or something like that would be a great tool for that. Obviously, you can use Intercom surveys for that. A little bit of alley-oop there for you. But if it's a bigger question where you're like, I don't even know where to start, like, I'm trying to understand what people's challenges are, then maybe it's more of a customer discovery interview. If it's something where you've got a prototype and you want to know, does this make sense? Can people click around? Then maybe it's like a usability test you want to run. So I think starting with that question is really critical. But the second piece would be just start. Like, don't worry about making the perfect process or writing the perfect customer interview guide. You can get started with NPS in like a couple of minutes. Have it set up, and then it's on autopilot. You don't need to think about it. And maybe you're going to get some fuzzy responses because you haven't asked the questions the right way, or you forgot to ask for, like, a comment as well. You can come back to that later on. It's like, there's plenty of time to get this right. And then I think the final thing is think about creating value. Don't be thinking about necessarily expecting awards from your team. I think in so many companies, it's great when you've got companies like Intercom and Great Question who really value customer insights and like customer perspectives, but other companies aren't going to care about it as much. They might be more established and they kind of know what the customers want. Or they themselves are the customer and they know what the customers want. But I think if you get started and create value, share with the team what you're learning, over time, they're quickly going to clue on to how valuable this is, how it's going to save them time and money, and ultimately build better products.
Yeah, no, that's super. I suppose we'll just move towards questions here. Bear with me if I see any that are popping up. So I suppose, maybe how do you make sure not to overload your advocates with the amount of asks and things like that? It can be very easy to go back to the same well over and over again. But I suppose Ned or Sarah or anyone who'd like to pick that up.
I can pick up what you're throwing down, Alan. So one thing that we baked into our product and you'd be able to replicate on your own would be making sure that you're only contacting eligible candidates. And we do that automatically, but you can create your own algorithm really simply as well by using your CRM. So making sure that you see when the person was last emailed, last contacted, and making sure that you're aligned on how frequently you want to be poking people so that you don't burn them out. And again, like, that'll depend on the age and stage of your company, of course, but making sure that everyone's on the same page and you have that visibility into how frequently people are being contacted.
Sure.
I'd also say make it easy for them to say yes. So make it easy for them to schedule time with you, send them a link, or answer a survey or whatever. But also make it really easy for them to say no. Don't put any expectations on them, and they're going to be more likely to open that next email and at least consider it.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, not to be too pushy as well, because people are busy. You have to catch them at the right time with the right context. Yeah. How often do you see teams doing customer research? Are you a believer that it should be all the time, or built into every part of the business, or does it depend on the part of the business you're in, I guess?
I mean, I think it needs to be continuous. So ideally weekly, if not fortnightly or bi-weekly for those in the States. So, I look at a company like Zapier, who, just on an absolute phenomenal tear, multi-billion-dollar business. And they have a requirement where everyone in the company has to spend at least 2 hours with customers every week. Every engineer, every single one from the top to the bottom. And that could be for research, but it could also just be helping out on customer support or on sales calls. And so that's just really built this customer-centric culture. We've got a similar strategy. A great question.
Yeah, you probably don't want to do it when you're a very early startup and you have 10 customers, but you might be overwhelming them a little bit. But definitely as you scale up, that's a really healthy idea. I suppose I'm going to head towards kind of closing out. Sure. My colleagues will share a few things here. First of all, thank you to the team. A great question. Thank you for being an Intercom customer. Thank you for sharing your insights today. If anyone would like to learn more about their all-in-one customer research platform, please do reach out to them. If you're a startup, we have an early stage program available where we have over 5,000 startups using Intercom, and it's available at a 95% discount. So it's available on our website. If you're an SME or more mid-market, check out the plans on our website or drop into the messenger to get connected to our sales team and chat. But just a big thank you to Ned and to Sarah for your time today, and my colleague Ava. We really appreciate it. And thank you for everyone for joining us today. We're going to have another webinar in about a month's time with Mercury Bank and with WeFunder, focused on community fundraising. So an interesting topic for startups at the moment, and probably lends itself into this same conversation, because there's a way of incentivizing people. Let them invest in your own business as well. For sure, it's a nice thing to see it's happening more and more now. So thank you everyone, and thank you Ned, Sarah, Ava, for your time.
Thanks for having us, guys. Great to meet you all.
Thank you so much. See you soon.
Bye now.